And 3 first names. James Arnold Taylor.
Are you enjoying Star Wars weekends? Isn't it the best ever? Isn't it awesome? Totally awesome? Sorry, I broke into character. I get excited. I get excited when I get to do something that's about to happen here now. Oh, do we have any Mark Hamill fans here? Oh, man. Well, then let's get right to it. What do you say? Good? Yeah? Let's do it! Oh, see, he's going to feed off of that. That's wonderful. You got to give him that every time he comes out, every time he says something, every time. We love this man. And, you know, Star Wars royalty almost doesn't even seem to do it justice, but let's take a look at him in action on the screens. Have a seat.
I will.
Come on, make yourself at home. This is pretty great to have you here.
I just went on Star Tours.
You did. Now, I gotta ask though, did other people kind of go, isn't this, you know?
No, but my son reminded me that they asked if I wanted to go ride the prototype, which was out in Burbank at the Imagineering facility.
Yeah.
And it's completely unmarked.
Yes, no, I know. I've been there many times.
Great place. Disney. And you know, out in this parking lot is this big white box.
Yeah.
You know, and we all got up and I think we even used a stepladder to get in, but they said, oh, you should have been here last night because the picture and the sound were out of sync and everybody got sick to their stomach.
Yeah, I should have been there.
Yeah, I know. Well, it's not a weird thing to say. No, it worked flawlessly. But what I'm saying is, it's just been so improved.
Yeah, it's pretty fantastic, isn't it?
Unbelievable.
And it's
I don't
different.
remember having 3D glasses in the old days.
You know that it changes all the time, too.
I've heard it. I don't know
Yeah.
how it triggers.
Were you the rebel spy?
No, my little niece, Evelyn. Was
Oh, that's cool.
She's only 6, so she felt horribly guilty. I said, no, you're a spy to Vader. That's a good thing.
Yes.
You're a good guy.
We have to solve these younglings all for
I wonder how they picked that out. I mean, is it whoever sits in that seat, or they
I have no idea. The force is strong here.
Let's get that guy.
We never question what Mickey wants to do. We just do. Now, okay. But speaking of that, here you are, your first Star Wars weekends. We are so grateful to have him. You've been had.
Did anybody see the show yesterday? Oh, now I'm going to change my answers.
I saw it. Hey, but let me ask you this, though, one question. Are you working on anything new?
Well, listen, I was hoping to be clean-shaven, but I'm doing this little low-budget independent movie, and they want me to have a beard. And I'm big on, I love to keep surprises.
Yeah.
It takes me forever to grow a beard. And so I did a test run, and I realized if I waited till the day after tomorrow, when I finish here, I wouldn't be ready for when they're going to be ready. So, and by the way, I'm up for the title role in the George Lucas story. Fingers crossed!
Yeah. You got it down.
I'm already too old for that part.
No. But, you know, just very briefly, I just want to say, I remember going to the movies and seeing Star Wars as a young man, and what I loved about it was that I didn't know what to expect.
Yes.
I love going to the movies and being surprised by it all, being taken in by it all. That's what movies are about. And so the thing that we love is that we're going to actually be surprised by it if we don't have all this information constantly there. So we're going to talk more about these other movies you've done, 4, 5, and 6.
Well, see, this crowd understands. I mean, you guys, I've always said this, the Star Wars fans over the years have become like family to me, in the sense that I can trust you. I mean, you are so affectionate, you're so positive, and you understand, like a lot of people I don't think understand, that the reason the secrecy is so high is not because we want to annoy you or frustrate you, is we want to maximize your enjoyment of episode 7 when it finally hits, and we want you to discover it at the movies and not on the internet. There are terrible blue meanies out there, blue meanies that will read the script and pictures from on set, you know, where everybody has a camera on their phone now, and it's too bad, because I had 4 sisters, and they used to love to go into my parents' closet and saying, "You're getting the B and Cecil puppet for Christmas." And not only does it ruin the surprise, but then you have to act surprised like you don't know. So,
that's right.
But people are more than understanding of why we're trying to. Now, if I were you, if you see stuff on the internet where people try and blab stuff, do that.
Look away. Nothing to see.
Not dignified. Look at it. It'll preserve the surprises for you.
Well, I wanted something you said there, talk about when you were a kid.
Right.
Now, acting, when did that become a pursuit for you? When you were a little kid or a young man? When did it happen?
When did what happen?
When you got the acting bug and you thought, I want to pursue this.
You know, some of my earliest memories, first of all, when I discovered comic strips in the newspaper, that they would deliver them up to your front door. And there were comic strips in those days where you didn't even have to read. Nancy and Sluggo was silent, The Little King. But I learned to read because of comic strips. And I loved animated cartoons. You know, of course, they used to show, on Mickey Mouse Club, they'd show animated cartoons. I saw that episode where they showed Pinto Colvig did Goofy, but Clarence Nash doing Donald Duck. I was mesmerized. I was so small. These cartoons would arrive full blown, and you really didn't understand the process of how they were made. And then when I realized, wow, grown-ups go to work and they do Donald Duck.
It's the best job in the world, I'll tell you.
I want a job like that, because I think there's something about, I've never understood the concept of a second childhood, because I'm not finished with my first one.
That's right. So then, what about sci-fi? Were you into sci-fi?
I'll tell you, my very first movie that just knocked me for a loop was the black and white King Kong on television. And it seemed so tragic to me. I mean, it just made me cry my eyes out because it was on $1 million movie when we lived in New York, which means they showed it Monday through Friday. And so when I saw it Monday, it just devastated me. And then my mom saw me sitting in front of the TV waiting for it to come on Tuesday, and she goes, "What are you going to watch that again for?" I said, "Oh, Mom, you got to see it. It's so great. There's dinosaurs." And for some reason, I thought Kong could avoid going to New York. I said that was his only downfall. Don't go to New York. It really devastated me. And again, I was so fascinated with the process. I didn't know how they did stop frame animation, but I read Famous Monsters magazines. I loved doing magic tricks and puppets. And like I say, at the middle of 7 children, I had an audience built into the household.
And so then you thought, I want to do some of this acting. But could you have ever imagined then that you would be put into the biggest science fiction film ever?
No. And let me tell you though, on set, like the first couple of days when we were out in Tunisia, because we started at that sequence, and it was before Harrison or Carrie came over. It was me, Tony Daniels as 3PO, and Kenny Baker, the droids, and Sir Alec Guinness, all that those sequences were done first.
Okay.
And, you know, standing out there, and they gave me a ray gun, they gave me a floating car, they gave me a 3PO and an R2. I thought, I could just live here the rest of my life. I'm so happy.
Look at you.
You know, yeah, it was so great. I mean, you know, I never took it for granted. It's like, pinch me. I just am, or even, you know, when I eventually got into the Rancor's hand in
in Return of the Jedi.
In Jedi, right? I thought, oh my God, you know, who would ever dream, you know? Because I remember thinking about Fay Ray.
Yeah, you're back up.
Not everybody gets to be in a giant monster.
There you are.
Yes, and I had photographs taken of my son Nathan in the hand. He's got one of the most interesting baby books ever. Because they let him go play in the Muppet workshop, you know, they have these things called anything Muppets where they're Velcro.
Oh, you just get to
switch the eyes, and you know, Frank and Jim were just such family-oriented people that you know, they could have been more accommodating.
That is fantastic. But so now the cast then finally comes together, and you're shooting then, say, in the Millennium Falcon on the Death Star when you finally get Carrie and Harrison and Peter and everybody there.
I'd never been to England before. I mean, of course, I had imagined it all in my head. I was a huge Beatlemaniac, and I loved British movies. Lavender Hill Mob, Lady Killers. I loved British comedy. One of the things was I lived at Glebe Place in a basement apartment, and I was right near Marylebone Station, which was this big train station. And the first time I took the train, I had this overwhelming sense of deja vu. I mean, why does this look so familiar to me? I couldn't quite place it. And somehow I mentioned it on set, and Gil Taylor, who was the cinematographer on the original Star Wars set, he said, Marylebone Station? He said, oh, that's where we shot Hard Day's Night. You shot Hard Day's Night? And he said, yes. And of course, I turned into fanboy. I said, oh, what were the Beatles like? But Gil had a little bit of the cantankerous C-3PO in him.
Yeah.
You know, he tended to see the dark cloud in the silver lining. And, you know, I was terrible. You know, all those screaming girls. And so,
yeah, that's rough.
He was the one, he actually suggested, we were at dinner one night in Africa, you know, because I only had a chance to sort of get used to England before we were off to North Africa.
Yeah.
And at dinner one night, he was complaining, he said, you know, because I said, you know, you have to use your imagination because the floating car was added later, really. We had a car, but it was like on a little merry-go-round. It had a bar.
On the backside.
So I could pull in, and they could disguise it, and it looked like it was hovering, you know, because it bounced a little bit.
Yeah.
You know, and I said, well, I guess we'll have to wait till the movie to see what it really looks like. He said, but I told them, why not just get a real hovercraft? And, you know, I'm kind of slow, as you'll gather during the show. Sounds like a good idea to me. Yeah. I went to George and I said, I didn't think it through. I said, George, you know, Gil just said, well, why didn't we get a real hovercraft and save all those special effects? He goes, do you know what a hovercraft would do on the sand dunes? Oh, yeah. It'd be a 100-foot cloud of nothing but sand.
Yeah. But fantastic stuff. And the chemistry that you all had together, it just seems very magical. And whenever we see like pictures and things from the past, you all seem to be having a great time. Like, well, I mean,
you know what it was too? There was everybody had their role, and I wasn't a rival to Harrison.
Right.
Because he was a leading man. He's probably 9 or 10 years older than I was, and Carrie was like a kid sister. I mean, look, I didn't know at the time. Literal.
Sure.
And so we all complimented one another, and they came by, you know, when I first got back, we felt like we'd done a whole movie in Africa.
Just in that
Tony felt a little sort of alienated because we were devoted to each other, and then as new personalities came in, others would go out, and we'd leave Tony behind, and he was sensitive, you know. He has elements of C-3PO in him, and
Shut him up or shut him down.
But no, it's, like Harrison had his Chewie and I had my R2 and 3PO. We're very possessive of that.
Yeah.
But as they came over, we were so happy to see each other, because you're the Americans in a foreign culture. And by the way, nobody in England thought we were doing anything that would last.
Yeah, were they just thinking, oh, this is just another American sci-fi?
They all thought it would be one of those movies that would play at matinees only for children. Because they had Doctor Who, and they had a comic strip called Dan Dare, which is similar, but they're not as used to the kind of variety of fantasy and science fiction.
The popcorn movies. We don't really have the popcorn movies as much.
No, and they, also too, there were all these phrases that they loved, that they just play on your ear. I remember our sound guy was, the boom guy. Because I would say these lines, and they go, and cut it, and I'd look up at him, and he'd be up there, and he'd go... I hope you can see it, the big eye roll.
Yeah, we've got you on the big screen.
Oh, well, okay. But he would pick up on these lines, and, you'd hear him as he walked by, he goes, hey, we're all going to Alderaan tonight, all of us. But I want to go to Alderaan, Luke was a little too enthusiastic for his own good, and, we had to reshoot. I bet you this is a trivia question, you guys probably know it, but we shot a scene where we actually say my name. She says, aren't you a little short to be a stormtrooper? And I go, huh? Oh, I take off my helmet, I'm Luke Skywalker, I'm here to rescue you.
Yeah.
Very matter of fact, as per the script, come on.
How cool was that, by the way?
Yeah. No, it's not that. It's just, I love the fact that, he says it like, what else do you do with a princess? You rescue her, right? Come on. Everybody knows that. But we had shot that scene before they changed my name to Luke Skywalker.
Oh.
So I saw it on the call sheet again. I said, wait a minute, is this scene, whatever it was, 38? They said, to my dresser. And he said, oh yeah, we've got to do that again. I said, why? He said, I don't know, I think they've changed the name.
Yeah.
So I thought, well, if they want to change the name, they should just go to an angle over my shoulder and I can dub in whatever. But George wanted that moment where I took off my helmet on a medium close-up. And I said, what did they change my name to? And they said, when I heard Luke Skywalker. Now, mind you, for 10 weeks or however long, I don't know, let's say 4 or 5 weeks, whatever it was, from when I read it to Africa to back to England when we were shooting the main scenes, I was another name. Does anybody know what I was?
Luke Starkiller.
Starkiller. Gern Blanstein.
Somebody said it.
Luke Starkiller.
I was Luke Starkiller.
Luke Starkiller.
And that seemed to me kind of tough.
Yeah.
And I like that. And then when they said, you don't know, they don't like you having the word kill in your name. It's too negative. And so I said, what did they change it to? Luke Skywalker. It sounded like Luke Fly Swatter. It just sounded wrong. And it just rankled. I mean, you know what it's like once you get used to a certain thing and then people want to change it. And now it's the other way around. Luke Starkiller sounds
weird.
Different to me.
Hey, now Mark, would you mind if we took you inside the Akbar studio right now?
Yes, but to quote someone... It's a trap!
You gotta watch out. See, he's gonna pop up. So
I want to talk about Star Wars, but I also want to talk about Sprint.
Sprint.
Any Simpsons fans out there? Okay, there's at the Bi-Fi, Sci-Fi, Mike, whatever that con I went to. It's Simpsons. I get out there and I say, yes, I want to talk about Star Wars, but I also want to talk about Sprint. And there's somebody in the audience goes, yeah, talk about Star Wars. And you hear Homer go, shut up, you nerds, you're trying to save you money on long distance. I always loved that. The fact that I would go and be a shill. Instead of just talking to you guys about what you want to hear about, somebody slipped me a little cash. And I go,
can you hold this when you tell this story? Star Wars Weekends.
I'm always selling something. Yeah.
Okay, sorry. No, okay, so we want to take you inside the Akbar studio.
This is vodka, I'll get drunk and spill my guts about episode 7. surprised that bolt of lightning didn't come down and hit him.
You're gonna get a phone call later. Mark?
Don't even joke about it. Don't even joke about it. Hashtag spill my guts.
This is not the hashtag you're looking for. So, I'm going to mention a few people, and if you could just give us maybe some of your best memories of them.
Right.
Okay, Alec Guinness.
Alec Guinness. He took me to lunch before we went to work to let me get to know him a little bit so he'd feel comfortable.
Yeah.
And I'm telling you, first of all, I found it hard at first to even be able to conjure up sentences. I got so choked up. Because my mom had been a huge Alec Guinness fan and made sure that I'd seen movies like The Lady Killers, Lavender and Mob, Bridge on the River Kwai, the majority of one, on and on and on. And so, I mean, I was dying to talk to him about his career, and I think I told you this yesterday. He said, no. I want to hear about your career.
Fantastic.
I said, really? You want to hear about General Hospital and a blue cheese salad dressing ad? I mean, I really had, it was pretty pathetic, but he couldn't have been nicer. He's just the sweetest and most, the grandfather you wished that you could have.
Yeah, I don't know.
And by the way, I'm the exact age today that he was when he made Star Wars.
That's right.
32. I kid.
You know, one thing I never asked you about on that, when in Return of the Jedi and Empire, the ghost scenes, was he on set with you? How did that work? How did you do those? Did you take it in another take?
I specifically remember in Empire, they had black velvet, and he shot his footage, and I was off camera. I had done my stuff in the snow, and the script supervisor read his lines, and I'm doing my lines in the snow. Then when we were on him, he did his whole part and was finished by lunchtime. And he took me across the street at Elstree at the old Borehamwood Studios and brought me we had an Italian lunch. He had qualms about it, he thought beginning, middle, and end was fine for him.
Yeah.
But George really was persuasive in terms of saying how it would deepen the experience and blah, blah, blah. But he sort of confided in me, he said, I believe I just heard more this morning than I have in my entire career. And I said, boy, do you deserve it.
Speaking of a big earner, how about Harrison Ford?
Well, Harrison I knew from American Graffiti.
Right.
And he was really proud of the fact that I knew him from American Graffiti. And I remember his name was Bob Falfa.
Yeah.
And what I said, I remember I said, I just love the way he said, hey, where'd you get the piece of expletive deleted. But he had that swagger that we all aspire to. We just fit in. In other words, I immediately idolized him.
We're like buddies, though.
Exactly, and I wanted to be like him, and I wanted to hang out with him, and I didn't want to get on his bad side. And I remember when we were promoting the thing, we'd get in the car afterwards, and we called him the publicity sheriff, because he'd say to Carrie, you were a little glib when you were talking about your mother. But he'd say, I gave an answer where I said, because they were asking me, how much did you make, and did you get any of the profits and all that? And I had mentioned, I said, well, we did it because we loved it, and I don't even know how much we made. And he said, I liked it. And I said, really? Thanks, Dan. So we sort of fell in. I've said George casts people that are exactly like what he wants, so he doesn't have to do big major overhaul.
Yeah.
Carrie was sassy and independent and very witty and quick on her feet, and you call this a plan? Give me that gun. No one could have done that better.
Well, how about you didn't get any scenes with him, but you got to meet him, and I hear it was pretty cool. Peter Cushing.
Peter Cushing. Well, when I realized I didn't have any scenes with Governor Moff Tarkin, I said, I've got to come to work when he's working. And I was on 2 separate days. I was able to go, and I observed, you know, like on set, and they introduced us, and then he had a long period where they didn't need him, and we went up into his dressing room, and I was able to, first of all, he was really surprised that I knew that he had been in a Laurel and Hardy film. He was in A Chump at Oxford.
Really?
When he was probably in his early 20s.
Okay.
Because Chump at Oxford, I think, is around 1940, 1941. He also told me his very first film was in The Man in the Iron Mask.
That was his first.
His first film, and you know, in Man in the Iron Mask, one actor played twins. So whenever Leslie Howard was doing his on-camera, Cushing was off camera, then they'd come around and they'd switch parts.
Right.
And he said it could, I said, that must have been frustrating, you know, to be so close to being in a movie, but then be cut out. And he said, it couldn't have been more perfect because I didn't have any of the pressure. I learned technique. I learned how to find my marks without looking down, find my lighting. It could have been better. And I said, why didn't you stay? I mean, you really had some momentum going, because besides those 2 films, he did some other work while World War II broke out, and he's a patriot, and he went back to England to you know, join the war effort.
God bless him for
But I mean, I was a huge, like I told you, I loved all of his Hammer horror films, and this guy, I mean, he could play everything from Sherlock Holmes to an evil Baron Frankenstein. I mean, there's no limits on his ability. What a great actor. And again, just a fantastic gentleman. I always wondered why he had this lavender glove. And his dresser told me, he said, well, because when he smokes, he doesn't want to get the nicotine or this fragrance on his fingers and transfer it when he shakes your hand.
Yes.
I thought, oh my God, we don't have anybody that polite in America. People are smoking cigars in elevators.
Yeah.
In those days.
Well, okay, so then we move on to Empire Strikes Back and Irving Kershner. You get to work with this fantastic director, and it's a whole, probably a different field than what you had in A New Hope then, too.
Very much so, and it was scary because Star Wars turned out to be so well received, and it seemed to have a perfect beginning, a middle, and end. I'm convinced, see, if George could have signed for a 3-picture deal, he might have saved that Death Star for the 3rd picture, you know, found different, but you know, he wasn't sure he was going to be able to do all 3, so he sort of blew it all out in the first one. So I thought, how in the world are we ever going to top that? And it's not so much a matter of topping it as finding new ways to thrill people. And then I started reading the script, and oh my gosh, Yoda, that was enormous, and it was so much more spiritual, and it was deeper, and
it was darker, and the good guys didn't necessarily win,
which is fantastic. What a shock ending. Now, like any 3-act play, Act 2 is usually disaster for the protagonists.
Right.
But I just loved it. I said, oh, great, we get our butts kicked. Big time. So, you know, it's what you love is a surprise in the audience, and obviously no one knew that he was Dad Vader.
Yeah.
And that was, again, in the script. I guess you all know this by now. In the script,
plug your ears if you don't. You haven't seen Empire Strikes Back.
Spoiler alert. No, in the script, the line was, "You don't know the truth. Obi-Wan killed your father." And I screamed, "No!" And it's just, that's not true. That's impossible. It's just the way it is in the movie, except the line. And I thought that, in and of itself, is a great twist. Because you're telling me that Obi-Wan Kenobi is really an evil guy who killed my father. That's
He'd never do such a thing.
I thought, oh, that's a great twist. What did you say?
I said he'd never do such a thing. How could he?
I thought that's a great twist ending in and of itself. And,
so it all also though happens on this Cloud City, and there's another character, and I just Billy D. Williams, who happens to be a guest here.
Yes.
That's a whole other aspect of that, introducing this character.
Yes,
and
just the elegance of this man, and his, you know, I had seen Lady Sings the Blues and Mahogany, and he just has a kind of, I mean, I saw Lady Sings the Blues in the theater when he took his shirt off, women were screaming. Seriously, I might have screamed myself. I'm trying to recall, but I mean, he's just this magnificent presence, and we were so lucky to have him. And again, he brings in a whole different vibe to what's going on. And
Been fun to see him here?
I saw him today.
It's been fun
I mean,
for
it
you.
was wonderful.
Yeah.
I mean, we don't get to see each other as much as we'd like, so it's a great thrill. And before I finish with that story about, you know the truth, Obi-Wan killed your father, before we'd even finished filming, we did that scene, and Irving Kershner brought me aside, and he said, I'm going to tell you something. I know what I'm going to tell you. George knows what I'm going to tell you. And now you know what I'm going to tell you. So if anybody else finds out, we'll know who leaked it. So I said, yeah, what? And he said, well, we're going to dub in, instead of Obi-Wan killed your father, James Earl Jones will record, I am your father.
So that was before you taped it, before it was filmed.
Yes. So I knew when he was saying that, what they were going to dub in later. I'm talking like the day before, maybe the day of. I mean, I was stunned. But what was interesting about it in terms of leaks, I mean, before the internet and all that, let's say we filmed it on a Tuesday. No later than Thursday or Friday, 2 or 3 days after we filmed it. Now, mind you, we're way up on, you had to go way up on these stairs. We were like 40, 50 feet up.
Yeah.
And there were those big wind machines like you see in movies where, you know, they you know, like those.
Oh, look at this, yeah. I mean, you guys
Okay,
are
there we are. And they get the wind machines going there. And when you're trying, you can't hear what anybody's saying. Normally, if there's a human actor, when his mouth stops moving, you know that's your clue to talk. It's not so easy with Vader.
I said, let me repeat it again.
I sort of go, going by his. But even in that context, somebody on set, because they would go down to the pub after work, and, you know, stormtroopers and stuff like that, and there would be guys, no, out of uniform. Back in their street clothes. We never knew who exactly did it, but, you know, the tabloid newspapers over there would troll for leaks. You know, they'd have 50-pound notes out, you know, give me, what do you got, what do you got, what do you got? And so within 3 or 4 days of filming that scene, on the front page of a Rupert Murdoch newspaper, I think it was The Sun, it wasn't a headline, it was just a little box. It said, Guinness head baddie in Star Wars 2. Because they hadn't announced that it was Empire Strikes Back yet, but already they'd heard the line, you don't know the truth, Obi-Wan killed your father. And so I was delighted in a way. I was, you know, we were supposed to be angry that they leaked it.
How could this happen? Yes.
But I was delighted that they leaked fake information.
That's right.
But I still don't get it. You know, remember in the old days, if there was a murder mystery movie or a play with a twist ending, you know, Sleuth or Death Trap.
Yeah.
The critics would say there's a shocking twist, but they would never give it away.
Right.
Because it just ruins it for
ruins the whole
everybody.
thing.
Well, that's all a thing of the past. If they can, they will ruin it for you.
So finding out today that Jar Jar Binks is actually your father is going to be a twist in episode 7.
That I think Jar Jar Binks is my agent. that would explain a lot.
Hey, so speaking of creative puppetry and characters,
Yes.
it's a segue. I'm the segue king. Frank Oz, Yoda. You know, the two of you made us believe in this little green puppet as this living, breathing character that is one of the most beloved characters in movie history. And it's really between the two of you what you put together, and it's just fantastic. We believe him because Luke believes in him, and it's fantastic.
We also give credit to Stuart Freeborn, who had created the apes for 2001.
Yeah.
He created a Chewbacca mask where you could move the chin, and there was wires inside to manipulate it. So it was a collaboration between the Jim Henson Creature Shop. Stuart did they whipped the foam for the skin. I mean, one great thing about the production was they let you go and observe, you know. I remember early in my career at Universal, I wandered up to Stan Jaber's makeup shop.
Oh, wow.
He came over and he said, "Can I help you?" And I said, "No, I'm just a big fan. I just wanted to meet you." He said, "Well, you met me now, please leave."
Oh.
So, I mean, I wasn't authorized. It was fully within his rights to, you know, because there's trade espionage and, you know, there's a lot of secrets.
Sure.
But, you know, they were very nervous. Would they be able to pull off even a sophisticated puppet and make people believe it was real? Because you have to remember, this is the days before computer generated imagery.
Yeah.
George had toyed with the idea of a trained monkey in a mask.
Yeah, the whole different
I know, I mean, fingers crossed. It worked with an elephant being a bantha, that all he had to do was, you know, walk away and you'd be done with it. I mean, if you, even a trained monkey, you know, you'd have to have some sort of articulated mouth and, the nightmare. But I have to say, and I said to Frank, I said, you know, the only thing that worries me is, you know, he's always, how many years have you run? He's walking along.
Hang on, I got a little problem.
Yeah.
A little Yoda.
Oh!
Isn't that cute? Go ahead.
It is cute. This looks like...
It's like if Kermit and Yoda...
Well, no, what I'm saying is, you know, everybody's used to, you know, a puppet walking along this way, right? But you never see his feet. I said, that's going to be the hardest thing. Oh, people, you recognize him now?
There he is.
How are you going to get around the fact that you never see his feet? I thought this is so clever, and it shows you a little bit about human psychology. Right at the beginning, where I mistake him for just like some kind of frog, I'm looking for, I don't know.
He's like Gollum or something.
I'm looking for some 6'2", you know, handsome guy with a chest you get Shakespeare from.
Hello.
Yes, exactly. That's what the whole audience is misled into thinking. We're looking for somebody that's like a 29-year-old version of Obi-Wan Kenobi. And so he's like this pest, you know, there's misdirection and he's going through my gear. But there's one shot where he climbs up on the box and he puts a knee up.
Yep.
And that, once the audience saw that, so I'm told, and Frank is wiser at these things than I, he goes, once they see that, they'll forget about that and fill in, you know, I think there's a couple of long shots where Deep Roy is in a Yoda outfit.
Oh, yeah.
In a long shot.
Long shot.
So that he's walking. But believe me, they let me try and work Yoda. Because, I mean, we'd go down on Saturdays when we weren't filming in the early days. Because you know what happened on Empire? They wrapped everybody else and saved all the Yoda stuff for the end of the picture.
Oh, is that right?
So Harrison went home and Carrie went home. And for months, I was the only human being on the call sheet.
So you really were alone.
Lizard, puppets, reptiles, Mark Hamill. It was so lonely.
Oh, I'll tell you, it's a
Respectable. But I loved it. But and I was saying, you know, because I got in with Frank and Wendy and his whole crew, but they were in trenches, you know, so they would take the lid off, they'd get into their trenches, they had the TV monitors, and once they got everything all covered up, I was the only one out there. So it was the longest of the three. It took us 9 months of shooting.
Man.
And I had a little radio plug in my ear, and they could whisper. It's so odd, you know, to have like a little chimney cricket on your shoulders. Mark. What? Watch Goldfinger on TV last night. Yeah, watch Goldfinger. That was a good one. But I also, depending on where I walked, I could pick up radio signals. I only once did this because the first time it happened, I laughed. And they said, cut. The Kirsch was way across the lagoon, you know, with one of those bullhorns.
Yeah.
So he was like about as far away as where the theater goes up in the back.
Yeah.
And he goes, you know, what happened? And I said, oh, well, I was waiting to do my line, and the Rolling Stones singing Fool to Cry came in my ear. All I heard was, many years have I and I said, and that made me laugh. because it was unexpected. And he said, okay, we get the joke, but if that happens again, pretend like, because we don't have enough time, we don't have any, they weren't looking for footage for the gag reel.
Right.
So, I mean, not just the Rolling Stones idea. Oh, listening to BBC One, well, the weather outside is a comfy 32 degrees centigrade. You know,
Not on Dagobah, it's not.
Yeah, and then I'd walk out of it, and then I'd get back into what Frank and Wendy were doing. But I did learn, no matter what happens, don't break character, no matter what. Just pretend like, because I'd memorized the script. And in this case, I could see his mouth moving, and when it stopped, I knew to come in with my line. But it was a test, because whenever you couldn't see, if it was over Yoda's shoulder, like this, onto me, or if he was out of the shot completely, the real Yoda, they'd run him up to the lab and fine-tune him.
His entourage would take him.
And they had a dummy Yoda, a lifeless Yoda, that was the right shape, but just blank eyes and unarticulated, that they put for the eyeline. How's this for his eyeline?
That's
a little more, okay, right there. Or sometimes just a stick with a piece of tape. That was good.
That's what they do with me
I
sometimes.
stick with a piece of tape, and you're looking at the piece of tape on the stick going, but I can't be a Jedi. Oh my gosh. See, nobody knows that I'm talking to a stick.
So now, Mark, they don't replace me with a stick. We do have to move on
all right,
to some social media questions, because I know you love taking questions.
I do.
Now, we have had people do hashtag Ask Hamill.
Yes.
So it's social media madness. You ready to take some questions?
Happy to.
Okay. Let's look at our first question from hashtag Ask Hamill. It's, what is your fondest memory from filming the trilogy?
Well, you know, I hate to do an absolute, but I do remember thinking the most fun we had when we were all together.
Yeah.
When we were all in the trash compactor.
Good times.
In the cockpit together. And you know, I remember the three of us, we had a goal. We always wanted to cheer George up. Because George, when he's filming, is so depressed. You know, we do a big take, you know, they're coming in too fast, and explosions going off, and the take would be over, and you'd look over at George for approval, and he'd just go. Let's do it again, but this time, do it better. I said, Academy-nominated direction. One time, I remember, I don't know, this is a silly anecdote to tell you, but the monster that pulls me under the water in the trash compactor, in the script it said it was a Dianoga, okay? It's never said in the movie, but I love just useless information like that. It's a Dianoga. And underneath our stormtrooper gear, we had scuba gear on. I don't know why, it wasn't that cold, but it's just the way it was. But what happens is every time I went underwater, I have to go upstairs to my dressing room, take off the stormtrooper gear, take off the scuba gear, change my underwear, put on a new scuba outfit, put on a new stormtrooper gear, and then have someone do your hair.
Yeah.
So it was a real pain. You know, you say, make sure everything's fine before I go underwater. And the only reason I'm telling you this is because it shows you what mood George was in. One time we were just sort of hanging around in the trash compactor, and there was all these floating bits, polystyrene, we call it styrofoam. And George was, of course, up here, you know, we were down in the, he's twisting his beard and sort of frowning, and his usual unhappy self. He's you know,
Painted a lovely picture of the man.
Well, you know, you can imagine, though. I mean, after all these years of imagining it in his head,
he's got to bring
he
it
has
to
to
life.
realize it on film, and it can never match what your imagination is.
Not at all.
And he's got to be worrying about a bazillion different things.
Sure.
And what happened was, he and I just linked eyes. We just noticed each other, and just to cheer him up, I took a little piece of polystyrene off my stormtrooper outfit and said, "Pardon me, George, could this be Dianoga poo-poo?" Which, for the younger people, there's a song called "Pardon Me, Boys, is this the Chattanooga choo-choo?" And I thought that would make him laugh, and all he did was he walked up to me like this, put his foot on my chest, and pushed me. All right, get him up to the dressing room. There's you, George. I'll never try humor on you again.
Okay, one last question. You have time for one last question?
Absolutely.
Okay.
I'll talk fast.
Okay. Mark, when you filmed the Luke and Leia kissing scene, did you know that they were going to be revealed as brother and sister?
No.
There it is.
It's like the ultimate good news, bad news joke. The good news is there's one really attractive woman in the galaxy. There is. Bad news is she's your sister. Like I said, I mean, this coffee table book came out between Star Wars and Empire that was like aliens of the galaxy and so forth. And I remember I got a copy of it and signed it. Dear George, please pick me a girlfriend from this book. Love, Mark. Because that was some of the criticism that we got, was where are all the women in the movie? And no, I even suspect, I don't know for sure, but I thought, he's making this up as he goes along. I don't believe, I mean, I'm probably wrong, but for some reason I don't believe he thought that Princess Leia was my sister during the original movie, but I have no proof.
Okay.
And the way it's panned out. So I'm thinking, well, you know, you shouldn't bring logic. I mean, when I saw that Natalie Portman was my mother, I thought, holy moly, she winds up a woman that beautiful has a kid that looks like this.
Cut it out.
I'm not buying it.
You were quite
I shall look great
back.
or handsome.
Come on, that was great. Hey, Mark, you are so kind to spend all this time with us, and you all were so giving on it. I know we could talk forever, but we do have to wrap it up. Is there anything you would like to say to your fans as we close here?
Well, obviously, the first thing that comes to mind is thank you all so much. I mean, we never expected all these years later that you would be so passionate about what we've done. I never dreamed it could be true, and we're just so grateful. And if it weren't for you, we wouldn't be sitting here now. I love you all. I think of you a little bit more like family than I do fans. I mean, it's just like I'm at home with you, and you know, in sign language,